the path on the back of your memo, Richard's memo, so far nothing has pleased everybody. So if that path in that picture were two 2-metre paths with a half-metre gap, because most cycleways, say off-road, mountain bike, etc., are probably 300 wide or something like that. I'm just wondering, would that be a solution to look at, or have you looked at it? I know we've gone over this a number of times, and I apologise for bringing it up again, but
I mean, as Tim said, our view is that the 4-metre wide shared path is the best option, and while I only listened to part of it, I thought that was supported by Glenn Corey of Spokes this morning, and he did acknowledge that, there's pros, cons, pluses, minuses for everything, but, my understanding of what he was saying is he did seem to think that was a reasonable option. I think the segregated paths, as you would have seen from the arborist report that we circulated in the memo earlier on the week, that does raise issues with the mature trees there, and it's not something which is favoured by the arborist. So,
yeah. But
to put it bluntly, they're all pretty good options. What you've got at the moment is a pretty poor option, which is obviously not wide enough. Yes. But what we're suggesting is by a bit of a nose, maybe a little bit more. The shared path, 4 metres wide, is the best one. The segregated path is something which is definitely an option, and that has benefits to it. We are concerned about the impacts on the trees, but it does have other benefits. But look, it's a fine balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Right, if that's the end of the questions, what I'd like to hear, guys, is what, if any, changes that you want to tag, just so that we can focus the debate on any changes that people want to make. So here's the ones I'm assuming, and tell me if I've got them wrong. The park on Morehouse Ave, the tapping rails and the other requests from the blind, yeah? You want to raise that? The shared cycleway, is there any proposed changes to that from anyone? You have? Okay. The Selwyn Street parking? Yep. Is there anything that I've left off that list that people want to raise? So here's what I'm taking from what you've said. I'm assuming that the park on Morehouse Ave that you would like to debate, the tapping rail and the suggested improvements from the blind from Karina. You think that's covered? And do that without us doing anything? Excellent. The shared cycleway or other configuration?
I discussed that with staff. Oh, sorry.
No. I'm just trying to get the subjects.
Yeah.
Did anyone want to raise that or not? Yeah. Selwyn Street parking?
Yeah, I discussed that with staff, and they have included the suggestion of having the parking taken out so that, in fact, North Selwyn Street would have two cycle lanes. Yep.
But it is, so I've got those 3 topics.
Yep.
What have I left off that list before we start on the topics? Yanni?
Timing.
Sorry?
Timing. Yes.
Timing, like what, delaying it or something?
Like doing the bare minimum so you could make the changes to the traffic going through the hospital corner and delaying the other stuff. Just
to facilitate this, can I just, is there any other, before we get there, is there any other things that people want to raise in relation to a raft of recommendations at the end of this? If not, sorry.
And there's already been changes made as a result of the first consultation, which has been quite good.
Yeah, totally got that. So I've got 4 issues. If I start with the timing one, Yanni, I'm assuming, just so that I can make this a wee bit quicker than otherwise, I'm assuming that you would like to delay this or part of this, but can I just get a sense of if there's going to be any traction for that around the table? I'm sensing not, so it's over to you whether you want to raise it or not. So can I go back to the top and the park? So I've now got 3 issues, unless you want to raise timing, Yanni. No, but I'll do it at the end if you want to, okay? So the park on Morehouse Ave, there is a suggestion from you guys that we leave it in for a period up to, say, March or April next year, monitor it for safety, and then report back to the council then. Is that acceptable? I'm just trying to save a whole pile of debate, actually, sorry. Is that pretty much, I'm seeing a lot of nodding. Okay, so can I suggest that somebody would like to move that? Tim would like to move it, Pauline would like to second it. And so we leave it in the meantime and bring back a report to council on the safety of that by April 2015.
And through you, Madam Chair, we also have some draft amendments to the resolutions of parking.
Okay, let's just get these other
affected by
ones.
that. Yeah.
Did you get that? Sorry, Chris. Sorry, so it was that the park in Morehouse Ave, is it? Be retained in the meantime, and staff monitor the safety impact of that and report back to council on it before April 2015. Is that right? Is that what you would have suggested?
Madam Chair, I was just thinking that April, if we work back from there, that would probably have us writing a report almost now.
Make it. That's a bit
in fact,
scary.
it's probably already late. So perhaps we could bump that out a little bit further.
You absolutely may. What would you like?
Can we make it middle of the year, June? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Gives us an extra.
Yeah.
I don't think this.
Thank you.
June 2014 might
July.
be tricky though.
July 25th. And also the address is 45
25 Morehouse Ave. 45. The park outside 45 Morehouse Ave. Okay? Is that okay with everyone? Can I put that? Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carried. Right. Okay, let's start with that one. The shared cycleway through the park. Is there any change to what's being proposed that anybody wants to put forward? Yanni?
I want it redesigned, so what's the process for doing it?
You can move an amendment. What do you mean redesigned? How?
Well, based on the concerns that we've heard from the different submitters today, the whole concept of a shared pathway, being a cycleway through Hagley Park, and the impact on the trees really concerns me. So I want more thought given to having the option of a cycleway on the roadside of Hagley Park rather than through the park.
So we went through this at the Environment Committee or one long committee. I can't remember which one it was. And there was quite a lot of debate about that. Is there going to be, can I just get a sort of indication, are people wanting to do that? I'm feeling like there is going to be support for the shared cycleway with good signage and things through it. I actually tried what you're suggesting at the Environment Committee. There was no traction. Okay, so the shared cycleway is likely to go through, right? So that doesn't require any amendments in these motions, does it? Right, thank you. The Selwyn Street parking, Phil.
Well, the staff actually have looked at the specifics of how to legally address that, and there's changes around 6.85, I think it is, in the report. So basically they refer to a special, it's called vehicle lane, but it's a cycle lane really, for use of northbound bicycles. And then that's also, there's also a reference to southbound bicycles further down in terms of those changes.
So is this what you're wanting to move?
Yes, I would move, well, I'll move the report, but in effect, if council adopt these, I don't think it will require an amendment, or does it?
Mr Chair, if I could just confirm the staff position on this. So from our position, because of the lack of a firm commitment to a cycleway south of Morehouse Ave, and because of the concern over the loss of car parks, our view was that council probably shouldn't proceed with the cycle lane, on Selwyn Street North, but we realised it was finely balanced, and we realised that councillors were of the view that maybe it should go back in. So we simply foreshadowed that and prepared some resolutions to help council in case that was their decision. But from our view, it was that the cycleway without something to the south of Morehouse Ave was not something that should go in. But we simply prepared the resolutions to.
There was a deputation at your earlier meeting from one of the businesses, a number of the businesses, who wanted desperately to have that car park retained, similar to the ones we heard today. So, yeah, okay, so this is a possible change. We haven't actually moved the substantive motions, I've just been reminded, so we can't move amendments yet.
Well, I'll move the substantive motion then.
Okay, so Phil would like to move the substantive motion, and is there a seconder for that? Ali would like to second it. Okay, and so we've done the amendment. Shall we now do the amendment on the 45 Morehouse Ave, given that we've now got a motion?
Yep.
And that was moved and seconded at the time, was it? Cool.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if we could just raise one procedural issue in terms of the...
Yeah. Madam Chair, if I could just advise you and the council, just a bit of explanation on this. What I've done with 642 resolutions here and looking at this part, as I've done with many parts, is revoked the whole north side of Morehouse Avenue between Hagley and Selwyn. Now, what I've done is set up some alternative resolutions, and if you were to go to 6.52, Rachel, if you could get the track change of that 6.52, sorry to put you on the spot, I can just explain what we're doing here to give it a bit of clarity for you.
Are you sure those two are going to go together?
But as we're looking for it, it's just that what I originally have in the substantive motions there is that the whole of the north side, all parking restrictions be revoked. I've now changed that to say just revoke from Hagley Ave to a point 55 metres east of Hagley Ave. The reason for that is then revoke that, put back into that place some no stopping and a bus stop, because bearing in mind this is going to be it's to improve the bus stop facility at that point. So then from that 55 metres on, we haven't revoked anything, so therefore we've moved the new resolutions saying it's status quo, meaning that the bus stop, that the car park remains, and that the no stopping at night for the boy racer issue, the whole cruising issue, that's a separate issue, but everything remains status quo. So
if we move the ones that you've got here, the staff recommendation, plus the ones that you review that for safety, so if we put that into these ones, we get the impact of leaving the car park that the guys were submitting on in place at the moment.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
And you might say, well, what about down at the Hagley Ave end? Well, we certainly have consulted on that, and we had no concerns about down at that end. And by what we have there for that 55 metres of curbside is improving the bus stop in regard to the new guidelines for bus stops.
Okay, so we put this plus the one that we had previously, Chris. Is that right?
Just Rachel, I'll just make sure she's got the right one. Going to 6.52, and yes, that's correct. So that's the new 6.52, and the track changes. And over the side, you can see the deleted the original proposal.
I'm good. I'm really pleased this is the simple version. Does this? So should we add to this the bit about you coming back in June, having looked at the safety? The bit that we just previously moved.
Are you okay for that?
I think it's in the substantive part of the motion, so we've probably got it there.
It's already there.
Yeah.
Okay, and this achieves what you want to achieve.
Yes.
And leaves that one park there.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, yes.
Just to clarify, if you look at page 4 of Ray's submission from Urbis, if you're looking at page 4, we see the single car park on Morehouse Ave, which we've discussed, and then moving back along towards Hagley Park, there's a number of buildings, because he was representing the owners and operators from 25 to 51 Morehouse Ave. So those car parks in front of the other two car sales yards on the other side of the large building, that means that those car parks are not affected at all by what you've just proposed. Because I'd imagine if they are,
They'll be angry.
That's right. And through you, Madam Chair, those car parks aren't affected. It's only down at the very
So only that
western
last
end
one.
near Hagley Ave.
Okay.
There, it's just modifying the bus stop at that point to provide good lead in and lead
Okay,
out from the
so
bus
we
stop.
are absolutely clear that what you're suggesting here, along with the one earlier amendment that we've put, leaves that one car park there and those other earlier two car parks. Right. Okay, now, what else did we have, guys? The shared cycleways sound like they're covered in the resolution, aren't they?
Yes, and Madam Chair, if I can clarify that too, there's quite a number of track changes there, and you may wonder why I've got a track change there for the intersection of Morehouse Selwyn. You think, well, what's that got to do with it? The reason I put a track change there and say, sorry, I just didn't go for it, but say, I said originally as detailed in attachment 1, and I've said now as amended by council decision of today, if you feel inclined to go that way, is that had I not revoked that and reworded it, yes, with as amended by today, then you would have had two resolutions that conflicted. One saying change the markings according to attachment 1, but you've actually resolved to do something different.
Well, actually, we haven't resolved that.
I know, yeah.
So let's come to that. This is the car parking versus a bike lane in part of Selwyn Street, right, Phil? The northern part of Selwyn Street, but the bike lane at the moment doesn't continue down the street. So the argument, just for those who weren't here, so you have all the information from the shopkeepers in that area, was why would you put in half a cycleway given that you don't have one further down the street? Why don't you allow us to keep the car parking there for a period of a year or two until the cycleway goes in? That was their argument, and at the earlier thing, the committee that was hearing that went with that argument. Am I correct? Yeah. So Phil is now suggesting that, what does this actually do? What does the special vehicle lane, is that a bike lane?
Yes, it specifically says for the use of northbound bicycles and further on for the use of southbound bicycles. What I think it'll achieve is, although the network doesn't follow to the southern part of Selwyn Street, that would be the intention, to extend the network when possible. Now, my argument is, if we delay this for a year, in fact, and we put parking in, that's it. When is council being able to be brave enough to actually take out parking? And I think this will be a brave decision, but equally, I think if we're going to achieve a change in the modes of transport in our city, we need to do this. So, and in fact, that will impact on the network. It will mean that more people will be on bikes.
Okay.
It will achieve actually fewer cars in the central city.
Okay, so this, it's just so everybody's aware of what Phil is suggesting. So this puts in a cycle lane on the
northern part of
Selwyn Street. Okay, Pauline.
Regarding the parking issue on that north side of Selwyn Street, on the north side of Morehouse Ave on Selwyn Street, the businesses there, do a lot of them have parking off street, behind the premises and things like that?
Through you, Madam Chair, a number of them do, yes. This was a specific submission on the first draft set of proposals, which did include a northbound and a southbound cycle lane on Selwyn Street. I think, again, from Urbis, on behalf of at least some of the submitters that were here before Council this morning, I think the quantum effect there of parking on Selwyn Street is 14 or 16 spaces that would be affected there as a consequence if Council were to decide to install those cycle lanes. There are no cycle lanes there at the moment, for clarification.
Right.
So it's about 16 spaces we're now discussing. Without speaking for the submitters, I think from my recollection from their submission on the draft plans, there were similar arguments to what Council heard this morning.
Yeah, but except that a lot of the business premises have got off-street parking, and plus there was also the comment that a lot of those parks are being used by staff to park at, like perhaps from the hospital or as long-term parking. So it might not be such a huge impact as perhaps the Morehouse Ave one would be. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, the business people were similarly motivated as this morning's one when they came. Yeah. Paul.
Mine's just in a comment just with regard to what Phil has said. I have concerns around losing parking, and I know there are issues when you do lose parking in and around some of the small suburban areas, which are like small convenience stores. You have elderly people that drive to those and want to park outside. So I just want to raise it. We can't just sort of carte blanche say that parking
We're in
is an
debate,
issue.
Yep,
Sorry?
it's fine.
Yep.
No,
It's
you're
cool.
fine.
It's cool.
Just, we're in debate on this issue, the Selwyn Street one. Yeah, we've asked the questions. We're now going through the particular issues. So did you want to finish? Sorry, Paul, you got interrupted.
I'll just say, I just raise it as a concern. Okay, we do want to try and get people to shift their mode of transport. We are in a transitional phase, and it's going to take some time to actually get a major shift in transport. So in between that transitional phase, we're just going to be very careful we don't kill off businesses that actually are struggling, some of them at the moment, and we want to make sure that people can still get to them on their usual form of transport, which at this stage is, for the majority of people, is a car.
Yep. Andrew?
I've got a question, if I can, for staff. The 14 to 16 car parks that you mentioned, what's the current time parking time restriction on those?
For you, Madam Chair, I think we believe that about 4 of those spaces are P60. So in other words, they're servicing visitors to those premises rather than anyone that might be parked there associated with those. As best we understand, in terms of the provision of parking on site with those premises, that they're probably already providing all that we would expect them to. I'm sorry, I'm just turning to a colleague here who sort of knows more about the detail of this than I do. Brendan, can you just clarify that, please?
Yeah, there's no district plan requirement for them to provide off-street parking, but they have provided as much as they possibly can within the site. They've looked at reallocating as much possible space, so they are now completely constrained. There's no more possibility to put anything else on site.
That's not the question. Yeah, I mean, it's valuable information, but it's not the answer to the question I asked. So what I've heard so far is that 4 of the spaces are limited to P60, and the remainder?
The remainder are all
Unrestricted, except for one goods loading zone. There's a good one goods
all
loading zone.
unrestricted except for one goods loading.
They're all unrestricted. So that suggests that when those car parks were put there, they weren't necessarily put there as high turnover parks to support those businesses, even though that may be the way that they're being used. I would guess, and it is only a guess, that, and particularly from what we heard in one of the previous deputations, that those parks are being used for the most part for all-day parking, people walking into town, people who are staff at various businesses and so on, or at the hospital even maybe.
That may well be the case.
Do we have any anecdotal comment on that, or has no work been done around that?
Only anecdotal, in so much as we do know from the draft Central City Parking Plan that southwestern corner of the Central City is certainly under a lot of pressure at the moment in terms of all-day parking to service a number of premises in that area, which of course has been exacerbated by the parking difficulties around the hospital, and obviously council is supporting that with the brewery site car park in liaison with CDHP. But there are genuine pressures for parking in that area, certainly.
All right, thank you. That's valuable information.
Ali?
Just to clarify what Phil was saying about the area that we're looking at, or he's suggesting the removal of car parking there, are you saying that there would not be a cycleway in the area where the car parks would be removed, but there would be intention to complete the cycleway on that area in the future?
Yes, and we're saying that if we can put in the cycle lanes now, council can then have the potential or possibilities of increasing the network to the southern part of Selwyn Street, so it joins up with Addington and the Selwyn Street shops. So that allows that future possibility. But if we decide not to, there would be little point in proceeding with extending that part of the network, in my view.
So, Ali, this actually takes the car parks away.
Yeah.
Phil's resolution takes the car parks away and puts in a cycle lane.
With a view to, in the future, extending the cycleway into Selwyn Street.
Further along on the other side.
So just having clarified that, I just want to support what Paul has said as well. I would be very concerned about doing that at this stage without a view complete at the other end. I think if you are planning to do something like that, you perhaps could look at reducing the car parking from all-day car parking to restricted car parking so that people who are currently parking there all day can change their patterns. You know, I'm all for cycling, but we can't be making these changes to the detriment of the people that we need to travel around our city and to work in that particular part of town. So I can't support that at this stage without, if we knew for sure that there was going to be an extension, it was going to be done in a timely manner, I would support it, but without that I can't.
Can we just get that clarified? When is that cycleway planned to go through? The rest of it? Because the cycleway's on the other two streets, isn't there?
My understanding is that in the council's outline programme, the upgrading of Selwyn Street south of Morehouse Avenue, which would then lead to the delivery of a cycle route there, I don't believe that's within our programming for the next 10 years.
Okay, I've got Yanni was next, then Pauline, Tim and Dave.
So let me just say, totally support having a really good cycleway going to the south. The accessible transport plan puts it on Antigua Street, so I'm kind of puzzled why we'd go on Selwyn. Can we look at reducing the traffic on Antigua like the accessible transport plan tells us and making that the major cycleway?